All right, so let's talk about game features plugin. I thought I'd create this video and talk about what they are, how do they work, and how to set up one. But just to give you a little background on game features plugin, they are essentially just like any other plugin, but they are meant to allow you to create modular content. That means creating content that are separated from your project's core content. And then these plugins are, I would say, game feature plugin can contain any type of assets. They can contain blueprints, maps. They can contain a whole new game mode that you can just add on to your game. Now, to get started and set up a new game feature plugin, the first thing that you want to do is to go to the plugins tab and search for game feature. You can see it here. You need to enable that and then restart your engine. Now, once your engine is restarted, you will be seeing this error message, which essentially tells you that there are some settings that needs to be applied. You can just press this button and it will go ahead and take care of that for you. But in case that you already have skipped this or you are somehow not seeing this message, you can do this whole setup manually by going to the project settings and then asset manager. And then under primary asset types to scan, you can add a third element, which would be the game feature data, set it to game feature data, the type, and also the directory to game/unused. And that's all you have to do to get started. Now, once we have set up the plugin, now we can actually start creating our own very first game feature plugin. And you can do that by going to the plugins window and then press the add button. And then here you can see there are two templates for you. And the first one is content only, and the second one is C++. But you don't have to worry about that, as you can add either content and C++ later down the road. Now, for the sake of this video, I'm gonna just create a content only plugin, give it a name. I'm gonna call it my game future plugin. And then you can see here, there is an error message. Now, it's an important note here to consider that all of the game features plugin have to reside in a subdirectory called game features. Now, you have your project, then the plugins folder, and then the game features. So now you can see the button here is disabled, and the way to get around this is to actually create these directories manually. So, just go to your project folder, create a folder called plugins. That has to be capital. And then inside, create another one called game features. And you can go back into the window and then press here and then select the folder. And then now you can see that the button here is enabled. You can press and create your plugin. Now, if you go back to the content browser, you will see that there is a new folder here under the plugins. And if you cannot see that, just go to the settings here and then just tick show plugin content. And then you will see your plugin here. Now, when you click on your plugin folder, you'll see a data asset that has been already created for you. And this is your entry point to the plugin, right? This is how you define what this plugin is. What does it do? And this is how engine kind of recognizes this plugin. Now go ahead and open it up. All right, so once the data asset is loaded, you can see there are a few things that you can edit here. The first one is editing the plugin property, such as the name, description, and so on. But there is one important kind of section here that I want to note, and that is dependencies, right? Now, to understand dependencies, I like to take a step back and talk about game features concept, and that is that game features plugins are meant to be kind of modular, right? They are meant to be separated from other contents of your project. And if you want to use a piece of code or another asset that kind of is not part of this plugin, then you have to make sure that you add them as your dependencies here. So you can just press the add button here, and then you can select a plugin that you want to use the assets from. These are the engine plugin, but if you have created other plugins, they will also show up here, so you can actually add them here. And once you add them up, the engine would know that you depend on those plugins, and therefore it will load it and kind of make sure that it's already loaded and ready to be used. So next is the state, right? Your game feature plugin has different states installed, which means the plugin is there, but it has not been registered. And then we have registered, which means the plugin is there and it has been registered. The engine is aware of it. And then we have loaded, which means the plugin has been loaded into the memory and is ready to be activated. And then we have active, which means the plugin has been activated and the changes have taken effect. Now, next is the game tag config path. Now, this is about gameplay tags. And this basically just defines where the gameplay tags INI resides in. And you can actually just look at the path here, and that's where you can create your gameplay tags. Now, next we have actions. Now, actions are probably the most crucial or most important part of Game Future plugin, and that is actions allow you to interact with other contents, right? From either that could be your project core content, that could be another plugin. And the way to do that is by defining actions, right? These are executed when the plugin gets loaded or activated. Now, if you click the drop down here, you will see that there are 4 existing actions here, add cheats, components, and so on. And how do they actually work, right? So let's just say in this project, right, on our core content, we have a character blueprint here. It's called third person character. And when I open it up, you will see that we have our base logic, movements, and so on. And let's say with our new game feature plugin, we want to add a new logic to it, right? We want to add a logic that is not part of the core content. And the way to do that is we can add a component to it using our plugin, but we don't want to do it from here because that would modify our core content, but rather we want to use the actions to actually add those components. And the way we do that is by using the add components action, and then we can expand, and you can see that you can add a list of components. Now, if you click add here, you can say, for example, what actor you want to target, right? In our case, we want to target our third person character. So you would just type its name and then the component class, basically the component that you want to add to your character class. So you can choose any class here, any component here, and then you can tell it whether you want it to be added on the client or the server or both. So if you have a component that is purely cosmetic, you can just uncheck this, and then it will be only added on the client side. If it's something that is authoritative, so that means it only needs to exist on the server, then you can just uncheck that and then just spawn it on the server, or you can do both depending on your use case. We're gonna do an example here, but before that, I'd like to talk about the asset manager here, and that is a way of kind of discovering assets, right? That's basically primary asset types. They are kind of assigned to each asset, right? There are a unique ID and a type that are assigned to assets, and it allows us to kind of refer to those assets without actually referencing them, right? Now, we can define a set of primary assets in our project setting core under asset manager, right? We can tell the engine that, hey, when you start, our maps exist in this directory. So, scan them, kind of understand them, and then we can discover them later on. But let's say if you have a new map in your new plugin. So let's say if you go to our folder here, add a folder here called maps. And then let's just imagine we had a new map, right? How did we tell the engine that there is a new map here in this specific directory, right? And that's where we can use the asset manager, right? So we can just add a new one, similar to our project settings where we have, our primary assets type to scan. We can do the same thing here. We can say map. If I'm not mistaken, it's map only, right? We can just say map, and then the type is a word. And then what we can do is in our directory, we can just set the directory to our plugin maps folder. When the engine starts up, and it kind of tells the engine that, hey, there's a map kind of exists in our plugin, right? So that's the use case of the asset manager here. Now let's actually create a new component, right? and then make it work. So I'm gonna go to our plugin folder, create a component. Now I'm gonna make an actor component, call it my component. Now I'm gonna do just one simple task here. I'm just gonna print a message on begin play. I'm just gonna say hello. This is from Game Future plugin. Yeah, so that's all we're gonna do, right? The moment that this gets added to the third person character and the begin play kind of gets called, we're just gonna play this message. Now, back to our data asset here, we're gonna add action, components, and then expand that, and then we're gonna target our third person character blueprint, and then the component that we want to add is my component here, and then we're just gonna add it on both. That's fine, and then we're gonna press save. Now, before we get we get started and we kind of start the game, there are a few other steps that you have to do, and the first one is making sure that your plugin is activated. But you can see it's activated, but I believe that this might be an engine issue, because once you restart your engine, you will see that it's actually deactivated. So go ahead and restart your engine. Now, once your engine is restarted, you can go to the plugins window, and then here you can see your newly created plugin is deactivated. So go ahead and activate that and then restart again. All right. Now, there is one last step that you have to do, and that is to go to any blueprint that you want to add a component to and register it as a receiver. And I'm going to explain in a second. So let's say we want to add a component to our third person character. So you would open that and then create a begin play event. And then you're going to have to register this class to a subsystem that already exists in the engine and tell it that, hey, if anybody wants to target us and add a component to our class, we are here. This is how you can find us. And the way that you do that, you can use the game framework component manager subsystem. Then you say that we want to register as a receiver, and the receiver is ourself, so reference to ourself. And now that's done. Now, before we press play, we have to know what kind of state our plugin is set to, and right now it's active. So that means the moment the game starts, the plugin becomes activated and all the actions are executed. So let's try that. And as you can see at the top left, we have hello, this is from Game Future plugin. So that means our third person character right now has a new component that we created, and the begin play has been executed from there. Now I'd like to show you a few things that I think are quite helpful. The first one is about Game Future's actions, right? We have 4 actions here that comes by default with this plugin. But of course, as always, you can add your own actions, right? And the way to do that is by creating a new C++ class. Go ahead to the all classes and type for Game Future actions, right? As you can see, these are the 4 actions that already exist, but of course you can inherit from it and add a new action. You can add an action that adds a new widget, adds a new input configuration, and so on. So yeah, and then you can create it and then just set it up here like any other action. Now, the next thing is, how do you actually load and activate this Game Future plugin? And a way to do that in C++ is, getting the Game Future subsystem, and this is how you do it. And then you can just call load and activate Game Future plugin, and then pass in the plugin kind of URL. And then the engine will go ahead and load the plugin and activate it for you, and kind of gives you that callback. As a final note, I would like to kind of ask you to consider subscribing to this channel. I'm creating a few more kind of videos on Game Futures plugin, modular gameplay system, and I'm gonna create a whole new series on breaking down the Lyra starter game project. So it will be kind of exciting. There'll be a few videos explaining everything in detail.